and welcome back to my channel. My name is Stacey and I am a mature student studying with the Open University towards a degree in childhood and youth studies. Today is a video that has been requested, and that is a video on commonplacing or Commonplace books and how I keep them and about them. So just to warn you, I am a bit croaky. I haven't been well, but I have fluids, and I would maybe suggest that you guys get a drink too, because this is probably going to be quite a long video. Today I have written an outline for the video because this is kind of a bit of a special interest of mine at the moment, and there is a chance that I will ramble. So if you do catch me looking off to the side, that's why, because I'm trying to keep myself on track and not ramble too much for you. So yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so what is a commonplace book? A commonplace book is somewhere that you keep or curate a collection of interesting information that you find interesting. So it can be poems, lyrics, if you're religious, prayers, or pieces of text from religious manuscripts or whatever it is, recipes, observations you've made, quotes, things that other people have said to you in conversation and you think, oh, that's a really great thing, that's really interesting, or whatever. Basically anything. It's specifically meant to be information from other people, so other people's words and ideas. They can be general or topic specific. So for me, my one is very general, but I've got lots of different things. So I'm someone who has a lot of different interests that range from crochet to astrology to astronomy to true crime to like lots of different things. But I actually find recently I've been looking up really interesting people, and mostly women, who have not necessarily been given their due in the history books. And so I have been learning a lot about women who, I guess, like untold feminist icons or whatever, or important women in history. So for me, that's something that I often pop in my commonplace. They can be topic specific, so I also have a commonplace book ready to go for this academic year, and I'm going to try a topic specific commonplace about childhood and youth studies, and that will be where all of my kind of academic university based work will go. Not work as in from university, but like quotes and interesting information and things like that that I can keep, so I'm not going through my notes constantly. Some people have very artistic, creative commonplaces where like they've got a quote here and a beautiful picture here and a sketch here and a watercolor there. Mine's not like that at all. I do carry a watercolor book with my commonplace when I'm out sometimes, but I wouldn't consider that part of my commonplace really, but you can, is the point I'm making. Okay, so just a little bit of background history of commonplaces, and I'm going to include Zibaldones in here as well. Hopefully I haven't butchered the pronunciation of that. Whilst I was reading this book, The Notebook, what's it called? The Notebook, A History of Thinking on Paper by Roland Allen. This introduced me to the idea of Zibaldones, which were popular in the mid 14th century. All the kids are coming out of school and it's all crazy out there, so I'm sorry if you can hear it. So the Zibaldones came into popularity in Florence in the mid 14th century, and it was a time of great economic boom in the area. They also had access to paper, which was not necessarily that common in Europe at that time. So Zibaldones were something that, very much like a commonplace, was somewhere where they would take down information and write excerpts from historical scripts or books, that kind of thing. Because it wasn't like nowadays where you could just go to the library or go to a bookshop or look something up online. Books were very expensive, so if you were going to look at a book and you would maybe take an excerpt of it and study that a bit, they would write recipes, they would just pop different bits of information in, very much like a commonplace. But something I love about Zibaldones is that they were often passed down through families. So for example, a father would keep one and then it would be passed down to his son, and his son would then write in it and use it, and so on and so forth. So it became kind of a piece of family history, which I think is beautiful. Commonplace, the word commonplace has been traced back to ancient Greece, where politicians and scholars and important people would keep, you know, pieces of their speeches and arguments and access information they wanted to access quite easily, and they would keep it in a common place. So that's where we get the word. Commonplaces came back into popularity again in the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and the early to mid 19th century, which makes sense. If you look at the history of the time, that was a time of quite great change politically, societally, religiously as well. There was a lot of change in religion. So I think that was also kind of the beginning of people having access to a lot more information with the printed press and things like that. So it makes sense that they would use this technique to make sense of what was going on in the times around them, in the world around them, and to kind of process that information somewhere, all this information that they didn't necessarily have access to before. I think it started out, from my knowledge, it started out with kind of people keeping like household books of like expenses and things like that, but then turned more into commonplacing. I think that's probably why we're having a resurgence now, for a very similar reason, is because we have unprecedented access to information from so many different places. We are bombarded with information daily. You know, you've only got to pick up your phone, you have apps giving you notifications. If you're anything like me, you need to turn on the notifications off because they stress you out. But yeah, you've got access to information at the tip of your fingers, but also you have access to misinformation as well, don't you? There's lots of different bombardments of information you have, and I think a lot of us are now choosing what information we want to curate, and we want to curate it somewhere. And so the commonplace becomes that kind of place where you can curate the things that are important to you and sort of filter out the things that aren't so important to you. Okay, so famous people, in case you want to know the kind of company you keep if you are commonplacing, have been people like John Milton, who wrote Paradise Lost, John Locke, who actually wrote a book about commonplacing and how the techniques he used for commonplacing. You've got people like Virginia Woolf, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Mark Twain, Leonardo da Vinci, Francis Bacon. It's said that Shakespeare potentially wrote about commonplacing in one of his sonnets. You're in good company historically, but also there's lots of people nowadays doing it. Like I said, it is experiencing a resurgence. Okay, so what kind of notebook do you need in order to be able to commonplace? I want to preface this by saying you actually can use any kind of notebook. There is not a specific kind of notebook that you need, or a specific type of pen that you need to be able to commonplace. You can commonplace in one of those old, what were they called? Reporters notebooks that I used to use when I used to get them for like 17p at the newsagents or something, and a pencil. You could use that. It's not a big deal. This is what I use. This is let me get this right. So this is a Traveller's Company passport size notebook. It's black, and inside the actual commonplace is this book here. So this is the same as this. And this is a traveller's notebook in passport size, and it is the grid paper. 002. So that's what it looks like inside. Probably won't focus. And then I also keep a blue one which is ruled. I'll show you inside. Ruled, and that one is my vocabulary book. So I like to keep interesting vocabulary as well as part of my commonplace. Other great books I've got a pile here, and these are just notebooks that I like, but it's quite a wide variety, so just stick with me. One of the best ones, I think, Lunchtime 1917, and this is like a, I want to say it's like pocket size. This one is grid, I think. Yeah, so this is a grid one. What's good about these is that they have great quality notepaper. It's small, it's portable, and that's kind of part of what you need to decide when you're choosing on a notebook. Do you want to be able to take your Commonplace out with you? Do you want it to be portable? Or are you just going to keep it at home? In which case it can be as big as you like, as big as you want it to be, because it doesn't have to be portable. I had previously had a large one, which I'll show you in a minute, and I went to this because I wanted to be able to take it out with me. I don't tend to take it out many places, but there are times when I want to, if I'm going to a coffee shop or whatever and I want to do a bit of commonplacing, it does make it easier having it in a smaller size for me. That is not to say that I won't change it to a different size at another time, because I probably will. What's quite nice about this is that it's got the content pages as well, so that's quite good. If you want to keep an index or a key or whatever, that's a good place to put it. These ones also have the little pocket at the back to keep little bits of ephemera or whatever, and they have bookmarks in them, which is always nice. These I get from TK Maxx or HomeSense, and they're usually about $3.99. Whenever I see them, I pick them up because they're very good value. And I use these for lots of different things, like if I'm going to a talk or whatever. Before I got my main notebook, which I have now, I would just take one of these or whatever. So these are great. Another fab one I found in Muji was this one. I don't know if it's called something. It's just an A6 grid in light grey. And it's got this like cardboard cover. And this grid is like, it's more like ruled, but with a very, very fine grid. I don't know if you can make it out on there. It's like this very, very fine grid, and this is beautiful. It's really nice paper. Nice size, A6. I think this would probably be the perfect sort of starter size personally, but you do you. You know what you prefer. So yes, this again, beautiful, and it's A6, so you can get different covers and things for it if you want to protect the cover. Another one is, so this is like my baby. This is my take everywhere journal, and so I have a journal in here. I have like a brain dump book, and then I also have a notebook in here specifically for meetings and things to do with Harrison and his school and his needs and things like that, to keep a record of. I could quite easily add another notebook in here and have that as my Commonplace. There's no reason why I couldn't, and I may do that. It would definitely chunk it up a bit, but there's nothing to stop you if you were after something like this. This is a Paper Republic Grand Voyageur XL. So this is kind of, what would you call this? It's just under A5, I would say. It's just thinner. Yeah, so that's A5 here, so it's just thinner than an A5. It's about the same height. You could use something like this if you wanted to. You can use a book like this. So this is just like a cheapy one I got from when I went to visit a Highland Cows. We've got, what's this, a Tomoe River paper one. Again, if you enjoy writing on certain paper, if you want to enjoy it. This is a Stalogy, you know, again, that's grid. That would make a great one. Midori, MD paper. Hobonichi, there's loads of different, these are all A5s, so you know, these are all beautiful paper, lovely notebooks. So if you wanted to go for A5, I'd recommend any of those. They're all gorgeous paper. Excuse the coughing, it's my cat, he has asthma. So this is the Commonplace that I used to use. So this is like a B5, I think yeah, B5. It was lined, and this is the one that I'm going to turn into my topic Commonplace. So this will be specifically for my uni work, my childhood and youth studies work, and I don't need to carry this around with me, so that's fine. It can stay here, it doesn't matter how chunky it is. Just a couple more before I move on. I had actually purchased the Weeks, the Hobonichi Weeks Mega, because it has so many pages in the back that it would have been excellent as a Commonplace. and then I kind of bottled it and didn't use it as a commonplace, which I'm kind of sad about now, if I'm honest. So that is something that is open to me in the future. As you've probably seen in my last video, not my last video, the video before, on my Hobonichi unboxing, I have a Weeks again this year, and I have another Weeks as well. I could use that, but also if you don't have a Weeks Mega, I'm sure I've shown them many times before, but Hobonichi do these little like extra memo books, and they do the same. Sorry, the cat has asthma, so he's coughing. They do the same for the cousin as well, the little memo books. So that's a really good way to commonplace as well, and it would keep your planner and your commonplace together. I am kind of tempted to do that next year, to be honest, for 2025, but we'll see. I don't currently use these for that. I use these for like planning, so we'll see. So that's just another thought. There are a million ways that you can commonplace, and I don't want you to think that I have exhausted all of them in this video. As I said before, choose a notebook and a pen that suits you and that you love to use. You okay? Bless him. Choose a notebook and a pen that you love to use, and it will encourage you to use it more. That's all I'm going to say on that. The pen I use, in case you're interested, I keep my commonplace in this little sacco pouch from Colour Cafe when I'm traveling, and if I'm just like storing it somewhere. So I keep it with all the little extra books, like my watercolour book and my sticker release paper book, just because that's what I take if I'm taking it out. And then I use a Kaweco Sport, what is this, iridescent? It was like the limited edition colour iridescent one. Let me see if that will focus. There you go. And I ink this up with diamine, I don't know how to say it, green black, because it matches the colour of the green colour. That was the only reason I chose that. Lovely ink, lovely pen, and I do enjoy using them. So people ask, can it be digital? Yes, there's nothing to stop you having a digital commonplace. What I will say is I have tried that. For me, it didn't work the way I needed it to work, but I think for so many people now who prefer to do things digitally, there's no reason why you wouldn't do it. And one of the humongous pros of that, I will say, is the searchability. Yeah, so if you've read Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte, this gives you like, it's like a how-to of a digital commonplace. That's how I would read this. And he kind of teaches you how to save everything and make it searchable as easily as possible. So if you are thinking about doing it, maybe get this. I actually got this on audiobook as well, so I actually listened to this one, which is why there's hardly any notes in it. Definitely you can do it. There are many different apps that you can use. So for example, what am I thinking of? So Notion would be the first thing that would come to mind. Evernote, Microsoft OneNote, GoodNotes would be a good one. If you actually wanted to, if you've got an Apple Pencil, I'm looking around for my iPad, but it's over there. If you've got an Apple Pencil, you can actually write it down and then store it and make it searchable that way. So that's another option. Or just a simple notes app on your phone. I actually still use that in my commonplacing technique, which I'll talk about in a moment. Yeah, there's lots of different ways you could do it. And however you do it, it has to suit you, which is why I tried that way and it didn't work for me, and that's why I've gone completely analog now. I will say there is something about the connection with your brain, the information connecting to your brain by writing something out. And I think, and don't quote me on this, there was a paper about, and I'll see if I can find it and I'll link it in the description, something about, is the pen mightier than the keyboard or something? I've got it linked somewhere, so I'll find it and pop it in. But basically it was saying that if you're typing away, you don't necessarily think about what it is that you're typing. It's like if you're in a lecture and you're typing out whatever they're saying. You kind of type word for word, instead of when you are writing something down, when you're taking notes, you're kind of putting it into your own words. Now that wouldn't necessarily apply here because you are copying notes, but actually something that's said in this book by Roland Allen, he talks about how when you're writing something down, say you're writing a poem, copying a poem out into your Commonplace, by copying it out, you have to kind of reread it a bit, and a lot more than you would just if you were typing it down. And by doing that, you process it in a different way. Your brain processes it in a different way. And there's been lots of studies about it, so you don't even necessarily need to read the one that I link, but I will say that there are lots of studies to show that writing it down is better for your memory, if that's something that you want to commonplace for. Okay, so what do I commonplace about? I commonplace about basically anything interesting that I find. That will include things like, so I've got the key here. See if there you go. So you've got copied text, quotes, lyrics, ideas, thoughts, mental health, trauma, special interests, art, books, and interesting people. That's my current key, and I reserve the right to add more here as my interests expand. I've tried to keep it as vague as possible, really, because I do have such a wide range of interests. If there is something specific that keeps coming up, like I've just bought a huge compendium about tarot and the history of tarot, and the history, and going into like all of the art behind it, and the symbolism and things like that. No doubt I'm probably going to need a specific tarot dot in this book, in this Commonplace, when I start reading it. So yeah, that's something that I can do whenever I come across it. I mostly use Commonplacing to record other people's ideas, although you will have noticed on here the pink one is ideas and thoughts, and that refers to my ideas and thoughts. So the only time I tend to record my ideas and thoughts are when they are very specific, like it's a short caption about something that I've literally just written about. So if I am writing out something about, who is this about? Virginia Hall. As I was writing this information out, I specifically had a thought and I wanted to write it down about her. Generally though, that's what I use my journal for. This is for my thoughts, this is for other people's thoughts. So this is for my thoughts and ideas and what I come up with. This is like my inspiration book of things that I think is interesting or inspiring from other people. And so the next question is, where do I find information to commonplace about? There's not a simple answer to this because it's everywhere, literally everywhere. From conversations with friends to scrolling on TikTok or Instagram to watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, audiobooks, reading, scrolling online, events. Specifically got a few events that I've got coming up. I'm going to a couple of speaking events. I will be getting information from there and no doubt popping that in my Commonplace, TV, everywhere. Literally everywhere, because as I said, we're bombarded with information all the time. There's no shortage of information, put it that way. Okay, so another common question is, why Commonplace? If you have an eidetic memory, then good for you, and you probably don't need to commonplace. But like I said, we are bombarded with information all the time, and certainly for me, why I commonplace and why I find it useful is, since having fibromyalgia, that has definitely affected my memory. Probably age as well. Aging will always affect your memory, I would say. I also think that we're all kind of quite stressed for the most part. There's a lot of people who are quite stressed, or even if it's not stressed, but you just have a lot going on. Our brains aren't made to take all of this information in all at the same time and be thinking about it, and be able to retrieve that information as easily as some of us would like, I would say. So for me, my brain certainly isn't anyway. So for me, having this book, like I've said before, the writing of the information helps me to remember it, But conversely, it also means I don't have to remember it. It takes the pressure off. So I'm not sitting there watching a film or scrolling through something thinking, oh, I must remember that and tell so-and-so, or I must remember that that's a really good quote, and forgetting about it instantly. So for me, certainly, I feel like it's taken the pressure off. I don't have to remember things because it's written down. So I can just take that out of my brain, pop it in here, and that's done. I don't know, that's kind of for me, because I have such a wide range of interests that it's so hard to remember everything all at the same time, and I want to be able to remember things. Yeah, it's allowed me to not be such a perfectionist about things as well, with it being a general commonplace, because it means I don't have to have notebooks here, there and everywhere. I'm not like scrabbling around trying to find things. Oh, what notebook did I put that in? It's all in one place. I kind of also, since reading this book that I mentioned a million times, it brought up something that it hadn't occurred to me before, but I kind of like the idea of like my ancestors or whatever finding this and knowing me a bit through this, through what I was interested about, what I chose to curate in my commonplace. I thought there was such a lovely thing when I've been reading about it, and they have pictures and things in there. Roland has put pictures and things in there, and I just think, how magical is that we can see what somebody thought was important to them enough to record in their very precious notebook at the time. I just think it's magical, and I'm not necessarily saying that I think anyone other than potentially family would read this, but kind of, you know, if I have great grandchildren or something who don't get to know me, I kind of like the idea that they might one day find my journal or my commonplace and find a way of getting to know me through that. So yeah, that was quite a sweet thought when I realized that. Essentially, I just use it as a way of metabolizing and processing information. I find that I'm quite a slow processor of information. So I'm the kind of person where if I've had a disagreement with somebody, I will be like, ugh, the whole time, and then I get home and I think of these amazing things I should have said. I process things very slowly. So this is a really good way of helping me to, it doesn't help me process things any more quickly, but it helps me to process them more thoroughly, and it's like that slow living kind of way. It kind of romanticizes how slow my processing is, I guess. What do I enjoy about commonplacing? Specifically, I have been in academia again for 3 years, and it has reminded me how important it is to cite your sources. That's number one. I think I'm really enjoying remembering, being able to remember and being able to cite my sources, and not just going, oh, that quote from, you know, that the person with the thing, and that what's it, you know, him. I used to do that all the time, and I still do, but this has helped me to be much more specific. And I can, if there is a quote I particularly like, A, I can remember it accurately and I don't mess them up, and B, I know who said it, which to me is kind of important. And it seems like a really insignificant thing, but for me, I think I like to be accurate with stuff like that. That's the only way I can describe it, and I enjoy that. I've always admired people who can come out with quotes from people that they admire, or say, oh, you know, as so-and-so said, blah, 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 blah. I love that about people. I've never been able to do that, as you can tell. So having a Commonplace book has given me the idea that maybe one day I can do that. And if I can't do it sort of off the cuff with my memory, if I have my Commonplace with me, I can say, just a second, and then I can go to it. So I don't know. I think I kind of admire that about people. So I am also kind of hyper aware of, and this is, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm kind of hyper aware of all the AI and the conspiracy type stuff. I don't know how to say it, 'cause it's like they say deep fakes of fake news, and I don't mean it like that. There of course is, But there's a lot of discourse around politics and ethics and things like that at the moment, and I just like to be able to cite my sources. People come out with a lot of throwaway comments that are not backed by anything legitimate. That's the only word I can think of. So for me, it gives me peace of mind that I'm not contributing to that. That if I am quoting something to back up an argument, I can tell you where that source came from. And I think that if more people did that, it would be nice. That's all. I find it quite meditative because I generally don't do it on the go at the moment, so I find time to do it, and I sit down and I light a candle and I just go through it. And because I'm not having to think of the information myself, which obviously when I'm studying I'm having to think up information myself, so that's quite tiring. Whereas I don't find this tiring because I'm just copying things out. I think it inspires me to be curious. I've always been a curious person, but it helps to encourage that part of me, and it also helps me to build what I like to call my knowledge bank, which is important to me. Okay, so what technique do I use to commonplace? How do I commonplace? If I'm reading a book, for example, and because this one's here, this book again, I will annotate the book. I will use my little tabbies and highlight things and, you know, annotate it, put some marginalia, if you want to call it that, in it. Then from that I will finish the book, and then I will commonplace about it all in one go. That's not how you have to do it. Lots of other people will just write about it as they go along. I find that if I did that, especially with books like this that have a lot of things that I want to write about and take down, it interrupts the flow of my reading and I don't take it in as easily. So for me, that works best. It's kind of, I read it and then I go through it and I'm kind of reminded of all the great things about the book as I'm writing about it in my commonplace. So for me, that works. If I'm getting information from, like on my phone, I'll screenshot something. I will write in my notes app. If somebody says something and I haven't got my commonplace on me, if I hear something, I'll just quickly get my notes app, type it in there, and then I can pop it in. So I will collect all of the places where I have, or like if it's an article, I'll cut it out, that kind of thing. So I will collect all those pieces of information and then I will write down, sit down, light a candle and write it out. So I've shown you the key, and then on the actual pages here I draw a margin, and this is where I'll put my dots. So some things will require more than one dot. This one here is On Being Ill by Virginia Woolf. So it's an essay of Virginia Woolf's that I read. And so this one from the key, so I've got yellow, blue and red. Yellow is art or books, blue is quotes or lyrics, and red is interesting people. So it's a book, I wrote down quotes from the book, and also I find Virginia Woolf a very interesting person. She's somebody that I admire a lot. And then I've shown you like the bits where I've got a thought of my own. Sometimes if it's like a Pinterest thing and I've screenshotted it, sometimes I'll just print it out and stick it in. And then if I'm writing about a person specifically, so kind of a very small biography, I like to print out a picture if I can, because I like to imagine them. I like to be able to envision them in my brain. So yeah, like I wrote about Lee Miller, so I added a couple of her photos in, some of her most famous photos. So yeah, that's specifically how I do it. It's very choppy, so I will have, sometimes I'll have huge chunks of like quotes, because I'll have gone through a phase of writing loads of different quotes, because that's what's interesting me at the moment. And then all of a sudden it'll be all about biographies, so I've read about one person and then that brought up somebody else and then that brought up somebody else, so that's just how it goes, and that's kind of what I like about it. I generally do that about once a week, where I sit down and I commonplace. And like I've said, other people carry their commonplace with them everywhere they go, and other people just have one just at home. Mine's a bit of both, so I like it to be portable. It doesn't have to be, it's up to you. Another thing I do commonplace wise, I've just started, is I've started making these little zines. This one is about Dr. Anne Burgess, as you can see. I don't know if it'll, let me hide, see if it'll focus on her. No. Yeah. So again, this is another very, I would call her a feminist icon, like an unrecognized feminist icon, because this is somebody who worked with the FBI. She's a doctor of nursing, and she worked with the FBI to help create the behavioral science unit, or the BAU as we know it now, to create profiling. And I think she's just like this unsung hero. And I watched a documentary about her the other day, and I'm listening to an audiobook about her at the moment, of hers at the moment, and I just thought she was super interesting. So I made a little zine and did some illustrations, and then I can just, where is it? So because it's only A7, I could just stick it in, because on the back I've just put my logo and stuff. So I could just stick it in, and I thought that was great. So yeah, I'll probably be making more of those. And if that is something that you are interested in, let me know, because I might be able to make some to send out, I guess, through Patreon, or I don't know, Gumroad, something like that. So if that's something that you're interested in, maybe receiving one of those a month, not necessarily just about people. I think I would do it more like, have like a poem, a quote, and a piece of information, just like a little snippet of commonplacing that you can pop in your commonplace. I thought that would be quite cute to share, but let me know. Another place that I find information, which I forgot to mention, are these books. So these are called intellectual devotionals, and these are, so there is a story behind this. I'll try and keep it brief. When I was home educating Harry, I watched a lot of YouTube videos on home educating, and most of them were from America, and most of them were by highly religious people, which I am not. But they used to talk about kind of their morning routine, and part of that was by reading their devotionals. And I thought how nice it was to have that kind of routine, like where they sit down with their coffee and they read a devotional and they just like annotate it and stuff. And I thought it was quite a nice way to start the morning. So I started doing that with non-fiction books. That's when I would read them in the morning, kind of in place of a devotional. And then I found these, which are called the intellectual devotional. So they're not religious, it's not based on any religion. But in here they have, so you get a page for each day. So I don't know if you can see on here, maybe it won't focus. So you'll have like the day that you're supposed to read it up at the top. So in this instance it'd be Thursday, and Thursdays are science. So this would be talking about surface tension and hydrogen bonding. It's just so random, and I love that. So it's worked out as Mondays are history, Tuesdays are literature, Wednesdays are visual arts, Thursdays are science, Fridays are music, Saturdays philosophy, and Sunday is religion. It's just perfect for me because I'm interested in all of those things, and you will find things that you are not interested about in this book, in both books, but it's a page, you know, like it's not a big deal, and you'll find that you know lots and lots of just this like snippets of information. And I think personally, now I'm into commonplacing, these are perfect for that. So anything that you're interested about, there's something in here. There's plenty of stuff in here. And again, this goes back to this knowledge bank idea that I have of like, I love just knowing stuff. I feel like I didn't learn about a lot of these things in school, and if I did, I've forgotten them. So this kind of gives you just a snippet, so if you're interested in it, you can go and look into it more. This version is the biographies version. So I am interested in inspirational people, like, you know, I've told you. So this one is literally just about people, from ancient people to modern people. And this one has, okay, so the topics for this are leaders, philosophers, innovators, villains, authors and artists, rebels and reformers, and preachers and prophets. So again, you've got like Monday is leaders, Tuesday philosophers, and you're learning about Hadrian, Boethius, Genghis Khan, Fibonacci, who else? Sarah Good, the villain, Voltaire. You just, I don't know, just these little snippets of information I think are really, really interesting. So I didn't want to forget to mention these because I like to, it's just one page in the morning with my coffee, one page of each, and then that's after I've done my morning pages, and it's just this nice little routine, and then I can annotate it and pop it in my Commonplace. Oh, before I forget, the dots that I use for my key, so like I've shown you this key, are these Stalogy dots. These are masking patches, they're called, and these are, I think these are the smallest they do, but what I love about these is I like the texture. I like that they don't ruin the book if you take them off, and they just have like this really nice amount of different colours. So yeah, I enjoy using these, but you don't have to use these, you can use any. I've got ones like these from Tomoe, you could use ones like that. I had some as well that I bought on Amazon, that was for the big one here. I had, because it was a big book, I bought bigger dots, so they were these ones, and these are from Amazon. So again, you can even use like highlighters or coloured markers to do that. You could just draw a dot or whatever it is, a star, whatever you want to do, but just in case you're wondering. And lastly, where did I learn about commonplacing? So the first place I learned about commonplacing was Park's Notes, I think it's called. I'll link so I get it right, and that's on YouTube. A gentleman called Parker, who's a philosopher, and I randomly came across a video of his on YouTube, and I watched it and I was fascinated, and then that kind of introduced me to his friend Jared Henderson, who also talks about commonplacing, and so I got into it that way. I also learnt a little bit about it from just googling it, basically. I found it really difficult to find information, but since then I've watched Megan Rhiannon, who commonplaces, and I'm sure most of you know who she is, if not all of you, and there are subreddits talking about commonplacing, sharing ideas, sharing like pictures of their own commonplaces, things like that, and so I'll link that down below as well. And like I've said 100 billion times, this book is my most recent find, which talks not only about commonplacing, it is literally the history of the notebook. So it talks about how people have used notebooks, so many different ways. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, I would love it if you could let me know down in the comments, like, subscribe and all of that. Yeah, let me know if you like the idea of the zine, and I'll work out how to create it and get it out to you guys. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all again next week for another one. So take care and have a great week. Bye.